Space, a brand new chart for the head and for the heart. It's your journey, your tools.
Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take that, just overwhelming volume of sources, articles, and research, and we try to distill it down into something you can actually use.
And our mission today is incredibly timely. It's laser focused. If you're listening right now, maybe just a few weeks into the calendar year, you're part of this massive global phenomenon. You've engaged in the ritual of the New Year's resolution, trying to make some, profound, sustained behavioral change.
That's the high point, right? The optimism.
Right.
But the low point is that statistical punchline that, well, millions of us experience every single year. The failure rate is just so predictable. You see the gyms, they surge on January 1st. Everyone's full of optimism, new gear. And then right around the middle of the month, you can almost feel the energy just drain out of the room.
We actually have a name for that moment of just precipitous decline. We call it the New Year's Hangover.
The hangover.
Yeah, and it consistently hits between day 14 and day 21. That window, that 3-week mark, is what we call the week 3 wall. And the whole purpose of this deep dive is to serve you, the listener, who wants to know why. Why does the crash happen right there, almost like clockwork?
And I think, crucially, we have to completely reframe the way we talk about this failure. For way too long, the default story has been one of, a moral failing. I quit because I lack willpower, or I'm just not disciplined, or I'm lazy. It just fuels this whole cycle of shame.
It's so toxic. And frankly, it's just scientifically inaccurate. We're going to synthesize research from neuroscience, from behavioral psychology, to make the case that the week 3 wall is not a failure of your character. It's a predictable, you could even say inevitable, neurobiological event.
So it's a collision of brain mechanisms.
Exactly. It's a kind of biological clockwork that you can anticipate.
Yeah.
And because you can anticipate it, you can engineer your way around it.
Okay, so let's get into this. Let's unpack it. We're going to deconstruct the anatomy of this crash by looking at 3 big concepts. First, something called dopamine prediction error, or RPE. Second, we'll get into the psychological spiral known as the abstinence violation effect, or AVE.
Right.
And third, we'll explore the huge difference between self-compassion and self-esteem when, that inevitable slip happens.
Our central thesis for this whole deep dive is that the week 3 wall is this critical transition point. It's what we're calling the neural valley of death.
The valley of death.
Yeah, it's where the novelty-driven dopamine,
Yeah.
that initial fuel, has completely evaporated. But the habit, the automaticity of it, just hasn't solidified yet. And understanding that valley, knowing when the fuel runs out and why that autopilot isn't ready, that's the only way to get across it and make a change that actually lasts.
So before we even get to the biology of the crash, we have to talk about the expectation, the thing that sets us all up for failure in the first place. Because to understand why the motivation crashes so precisely, right around week 3, we first have to tear down the biggest psychological saboteur of them all, the myth of the 21-day rule.
This is such a critical place to start, that expectation. The idea that a habit should be formed, or at least feel a lot easier by day 21, that drives the vast majority of the psychological pain that makes people quit.
You're told just white-knuckle it for 3 weeks.
Exactly. And then day 22 arrives, and the behavior is still really, really hard, and your brain just registers this profound sense of betrayal, of failure.
And that myth is everywhere. I mean, it's in every motivational seminar, every self-help book. Just commit for 21 days.
Yeah.
But what's so fascinating is how far removed that claim is from any, rigorous science. Where did that number even come from?
It's a perfect example of how nuance just gets totally lost in translation. This belief is so enduring, but it's really just rooted in a misinterpretation of some observational data from the 50s and 60s. The whole thing traces back to the work of a man named Dr. Maxwell Maltz.
Who is a plastic surgeon, right? Not a neuroscientist, not a behavioral psychologist.
Exactly, a plastic surgeon. And he was observing the psychological adjustment of his patients to, sudden physical changes. So think about a patient who'd had a major nose job, or maybe someone who had lost a limb.
Okay.
Maltz noticed a pattern. He saw how long it took for his patients to adjust to that new reality, to accept their new image, or to get used to the phantom sensation of a missing limb. And he found it took approximately 21 days for them to, as he put it, get used to their new physical self.
So his observation was about the internal mental image updating, not about automating a complex, daily, effortful task like, learning an instrument or starting a daily 45-minute run.
It's a massive leap of logic.
Huge.
And to be fair, Maltz himself was pretty careful in his original writing. He specifically noted it took a minimum of about 21 days.
A minimum, that's the key word.
It's the absolute key. But as this idea got picked up by motivational speakers and the whole self-help industry,
Yeah.
that critical word, minimum, it just got completely eroded. It morphed into a hard promise, push for 3 weeks, and effortlessness is basically guaranteed on day 22.
And that's the setup for the fall. You spend 3 weeks giving maximum effort, you're powered by that initial fresh start buzz, and you've got this finish line in your head, day 21. When you hit that line and the resistance is still sky high, you don't blame the myth, you blame yourself. You think, well, the rule says it should be automatic by now, so if it's not, I must be the failure. I must be uniquely incapable of this.
And that cognitive distortion, that's the first step right into the crash.
So what's the empirical reality?
Well, it's far more protracted. It really demands a complete reset of our expectations. The most rigorous study on this was done by Philippa Lally and her colleagues at University College London. They tracked 96 people for 12 weeks, and they meticulously modeled the exact time it took for a behavior to reach maximum automaticity.
Automaticity meaning you do it without thinking. It doesn't drain your willpower.
Exactly. Performed without conscious deliberation.
So what was the real number, the average time?
It was decidedly not 21 days.
I'm guessing not.
The average time was 66 days.
Wow. 66. So more than 2 full months.
More than 2 months of consistent effort before you can even expect the task to feel mostly automatic.
That changes the entire contract you make with yourself on January 1st. If you think you're finishing a marathon at 3 weeks, but you're actually only a third of the way there, you're going to feel like you're failing.
And even that average number, 66 days, it hides a really important truth. The variance they saw was vast. The range went from a minimum of 18 days.
Okay, so that's possible for some things.
For incredibly simple habits, yes, like drinking a glass of water after breakfast. But the range went all the way up to 254 days.
200. That's almost a whole year.
Almost a year. So if you're trying to build a really complex habit, say not just running, but running and journaling and prepping your lunch every morning, expecting it to be easy by week 3, it's biologically unrealistic.
This data alone makes that 21-day promise sound like cruel and unusual punishment.
It really should. And the shape of that learning curve is what's most important for understanding the week 3 wall. Habit formation follows what's called an asymptotic curve.
Meaning, it's steep at first and then it flattens out.
Exactly. You get rapid progress in week 1. It feels new, it feels exciting, every repetition is a win. But then the gains diminish. The curve flattens. You approach a plateau.
And that's the moment it stops feeling like exciting progress and starts to feel like a slog.
That's it. That's the week 3 disconnect. At day 21, the average person is less than a third of the way to automaticity. They are expending maximum executive function willpower, self-control, right at the moment they expected the brain's autopilot, the basal ganglia, to take over.
It's the highest mental cost coinciding with the expectation of the lowest mental cost.
And that brutal mismatch creates the absolute maximum vulnerability for quitting.
So if the crash is inevitable, we have to talk about the fuel that gets us through those first couple of weeks. Why is January 1st so powerful? What's the initial spark?
The initial spark is something researchers call the fresh start effect. It explains why we all tend to make resolutions around these specific dates. It turns out humans don't see time as a smooth, continuous line.
We see it in chapters.
We see it episodically, yeah. And we use what are called temporal landmarks to separate these episodes.
Like the first day of the week, a new month, a birthday, or, the big one, New Year's Day.
Precisely. And these landmarks, they act as these cognitive separators. They give us a psychological boundary line that lets us neatly sever our identity from all our past failures.
So it's the old me versus the new me.
Exactly. The new year is a clean slate. It's a boundary between the old me who, failed to quit sugar last November, and the new me who, starting today, is fundamentally different, destined for success.
It's a mental trick that resets the scorecard. It feels incredibly liberating. You feel invincible on January 1st.
And that feeling, that anticipation of this new, successful identity, it's not just a vague, positive thought. It's a measurable neurobiological event. That excitement triggers a surge in the release of dopamine in your brain's reward pathways. That dopamine is the neurochemical fuel that overcomes the inertia and gets the engine running with high energy in that first week.
So we're getting a free, potent chemical boost just by using the calendar. That sounds like a cheat code for motivation.
It is, but it's a transient cheat code. That's the problem. The effect decays, and it decays rapidly. By week 3, the new year isn't a landmark anymore. It's just Tuesday, January 23rd.
Right, it's just routine.
The powerful psychological separation fades. Real-life stress, old routines, work and all comes rushing back in. And that fresh start dopamine boost is gone. It's completely gone. You're left to run purely on your intrinsic reserves, which are often pretty limited, right when that habit formation curve is demanding maximum effort.
So the temporary high evaporates just as the effort required hits its peak. The fuel light comes on right as we're hitting the steepest part of the climb.
And that transition sets the stage perfectly for the neurobiological crash we're about to talk about, the negative prediction error.
Okay, let's dive right into the core mechanism of the crash. We talk about dopamine all the time when it comes to motivation, but thinking of it as just a pleasure chemical is a huge oversimplification.
A huge one, yes. Dopamine's primary role is actually computational. It functions as a learning signal. It's constantly adjusting the brain's model of the world.
How so?
Specifically, it encodes the discrepancy, the difference between the reward your brain predicted it would get and the reward it actually gets.
And that's the reward prediction error, RPE.
That's the RPE. You can think of dopamine as the rational economist in your brain, constantly assessing the return on investment for every action.
So if I predict I'll feel okay after a run, but I actually feel fantastic, dopamine signals, hey, that was a better deal than we thought. Do that again.
Precisely. We use a model from reinforcement learning to explain this, and it basically defines 3 states that dictate all of our motivated behavior. The first is a positive RPE. This is week 1. The outcome is better than you expected. Dopamine neurons fire a big burst. The signal is clear. Learn this, reinforce this path, repeat it.
And that feels like excitement, drive.
Yes, that's the so-called pink cloud of early success.
Okay, then the second state, which you're saying dominates week 2, is 0 RPE.
Right. Outcome equals expectation. You expected to run, you ran. You expected to feel okay, you felt okay. Dopamine stays at baseline. The signal is just maintained. This is when the novelty wears off and the behavior goes from an adventure to just work.
And now the dangerous one, the third state, the one that sinks the resolution, negative RPE.
That's the killer.
Yeah.
Negative RPE is when the outcome is worse than expected. And what happens here is that dopamine neurons actually pause their firing. They dip significantly below their baseline rate.
And that's a feeling.
That is the physical feeling of profound disappointment, boredom, or frustration. The signal from your brain is aggressive and it's involuntary. It says, this energy strategy is failing. Extinguish this behavior. Abort this project now.
So when someone says, I just lost my motivation, they are literally describing the subjective feeling of that dopamine dip.
Yes. The brain is cutting the funding to the resolution project. It's acting like a ruthless economist, saying the ROI just isn't there anymore.
So let's map this directly onto that week 3 trajectory.
Okay. Phase 1, week 1. High positive RPE. You've got novelty, the fresh start effect, you feel really proud. The outcome of that run, the pride, the endorphins, is way better than your prediction that it would just be hard work. Result, massive dopamine burst.
Keep doing that.
Keep doing that. Phase 2, week 2, 0 RPE. Now you expect the run. You expect to feel mildly proud. The pride is normalized. The outcome is pretty much what you predicted. Dopamine normalizes. It feels like work. It's manageable, but the buzz is gone.
And then the collision. Phase 3. Week 3, negative RPE.
This is the collision. The person is fatigued. Their prediction is often still pretty high. They're chasing that week 1 feeling, or they're expecting the scale to have moved more. But the actual outcome is grueling effort, muscle soreness, maybe stalled weight loss, and the endorphin rush is muted by all this chronic stress.
So the outcome is way worse than the prediction.
Way worse. And the result is a negative prediction error. The dopamine firing just plummets.
And that dip below baseline doesn't just feel like losing motivation. It feels like this profound, almost irrational urge to quit.
Yeah.
Or irritability. Or just this sudden, intense feeling of this is a waste of time.
It's a physiological mandate from your brain to stop.
Yeah.
And this moment is fatally compounded by the fact that the brain's control system is trying to pull off a very tricky maneuver at the exact same time. It's what we call the striatal handoff. And this is the deep neurological mechanism behind the week 3 wall.
The neural valley of death. Can we get an analogy for this handoff failure?
Let's use a high-speed relay race.
Okay.
Initially, your actions are driven by the goal-directed loop. This is the part of your brain that asks, why am I doing this? What's the value? I'm running to lose weight. This is the first runner, and they're carrying the baton, fueled by high dopamine and conscious effort.
But as we just said, that runner is faltering in week 3. Their dopamine fuel is gone because of the negative RPE. They're exhausted.
Precisely. So they have to pass the baton to the next runner, the habitual loop. This is the brain's pure autopilot system. It drives actions based on cues, not rewards. It just asks, it is 6 a.m., so I run.
It's muscle memory.
It's pure muscle memory. It relies on structural connectivity, the actual durable wiring built up through repetition.
But the Lally study showed that wiring takes, on average, 66 days to build, so that autopilot runner isn't ready in week 3.
They're not ready. They're fundamentally immature and weak. So the goal-directed system is quitting because the reward is gone, and the habit system isn't strong enough to take the baton.
So the baton is dropped.
The baton is dropped right in the middle of the valley of death, and that is the neuroscientific definition of the week 3 crash.
Okay, so when the drive falters, the RPE turns negative, the effort feels maximal, a slip is pretty much inevitable. You miss the workout, you break the diet. But that single slip, that's often manageable. It's the psychological reaction to the slip that turns a lapse into a total collapse.
And that reaction has a name. It's the abstinence violation effect, or AVE. This is the psychological accelerator that takes one cookie and turns it into the whole box. One missed run into abandoning the gym membership entirely.
And this idea started in addiction research, right? Explaining why someone recovering might have one drink and then just spiral.
Exactly. But it applies anytime you set a strong black and white rule for yourself. Total abstinence from a behavior. And the AVE has 2 main components that just work together to destroy your sense of self-efficacy.
What's the first one?
The first is cognitive dissonance and internal attribution. You've created this conflict between your new identity, I am a runner now, and the action you just took, I skipped my run and ate a donut.
That feels bad. That dissonance.
It's painful. And to resolve it, the brain defaults to attributing the failure to internal, stable, global causes.
So instead of thinking, I was tired, I need a better plan for tomorrow, you jump straight to, I have no willpower, I am a fundamentally weak person, I can never stick to anything.
Precisely. And that internal attribution instantly nukes your self-efficacy. I mean, why would you even try tomorrow if the failure is just part of your immutable character?
And the second component.
The second is the powerful effective reaction, the intense guilt, the shame, the self-disgust that is generated by that attribution. This emotional pain is a massive stressor.
And the old habit you were trying to break, eating sugar, scrolling on your phone, was probably a behavior you used specifically to relieve stress in the first place.
It creates a fatal feedback loop. The person tries to escape the intense shame of the slip by engaging further in the forbidden behavior. This is the classic self-destructive what the hell effect.
Right, I've already blown it today, I'm a failure anyway, so what the hell, I might as well just enjoy the binge.
Exactly. And this sounds purely psychological, but your biology is also actively working to make sure that slip happens in the first place through something called the extinction burst.
The extinction burst.
It's a core idea from classical conditioning. When a behavior that was regularly rewarded, like eating a treat, is suddenly taken away, the craving for it doesn't just fade away. It first initiates a burst of intensified, aggressive behavior to try and get that missing reward back.
So that's why the cravings feel so much stronger in week 3, right when you're at your most vulnerable. It's your brain throwing a tantrum.
It is a biological tantrum. The deprivation state shows up as increased irritability, anxiety, and a dramatically lowered threshold for giving in. So to put it all together, the biological extinction burst causes the intense craving that leads to the slip.
And then the psychological abstinence violation effect processes that slip in the worst way possible and turns it into a full-blown quit.
The collision is total.
And we can see this happening in the brain, right? The neuroimaging studies show this battle.
Oh, absolutely. We see this classic battle between the cool executive systems and the hot emotional systems. First, you get prefrontal cortex deactivation. The PFC, your brain's CEO for impulse control and long-term planning, it basically weakens its connection to your emotional centers when you're under stress.
The brakes go offline.
The brakes go offline. At the same time, you get limbic hyperactivation. The amygdala, your threat detector, and the insula, which processes your physical gut feelings, they go into overdrive.
Okay.
The insula is what translates that AVE-induced shame into a physical, gut-wrenching feeling of distress.
And you just want that feeling to stop.
Your overwhelming drive is to make that physical distress stop, and usually the quickest way is to go back to the old comfortable habit.
Which leads to this devastating chemical feedback loop.
The shame and self-criticism from the AVE triggers a powerful release of the stress hormone, cortisol. And cortisol directly impairs PFC function. So you get this horrific loop. The slip leads to shame, which leads to cortisol, which weakens your PFC, which leads to less willpower and more slips.
Your rational self is being chemically handicapped by the stress of feeling like a failure.
Exactly.
That connects perfectly to this idea of the metabolic drain. We always focus on the mental struggle, but starting a new resolution is a profound physical stressor. It drains our biological reserves.
We have to acknowledge the cost of change. And for that, we can turn to Hans Selye's classic model, the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS. It describes the body's three-stage response to any stressor. And the crucial point here is that the body processes even positive changes, what we call eustress, like a new diet or exercise plan, in a similar way to negative stress.
The body just registers it as increased demand. So walk us through the stages and where week 3 fits in.
Okay, stage 1, the alarm reaction. This is week 1. Adrenaline, initial cortisol. They mobilize your resources. You feel focused, maybe a little wired. This aligns perfectly with that fresh start dopamine spike. Stage 2, resistance. This is what dominates weeks 2 and 3. Your body's trying to adapt to this new, sustained, high-level demand. Cortisol levels stay elevated to support the new vigilance, the effort of restricting calories or getting out of a warm bed early. And this stage is incredibly metabolically expensive.
You're burning through your reserves.
You're accumulating what's called allostatic load, the physiological wear and tear of just maintaining this high state of readiness.
So your body is fighting its own preference for comfort and ease.
It is. And if that effort is sustained without enough recovery or reward, the reserves inevitably bottom out.
Which brings us to the crash.
Right. The week 3 crash is that transition from the resistance stage into the early signs of exhaustion. Your brain, which is all about survival and conserving energy, it interprets this depletion and it forcefully downregulates your motivation to save what energy is left.
So it's a survival mechanism, not a moral flaw.
100%.
Yeah.
And the ultimate weapon in this whole metabolic war is what we can call cortisol's war on dopamine.
That sounds bad.
It's devastating for the reward system. Chronic stress that sustained elevated cortisol from the resistance stage, it directly attacks your reward centers. It actually reduces the sensitivity of your dopamine receptors in the nucleus accumbens.
So even if you do something good, you feel less of a reward from it.
You feel less reward. It induces a state of anhedonia, the inability to feel normal levels of pleasure.
Wow. Let's just hammer that home. You are working harder than ever, physically depleting yourself in this resistance stage. But because of the cortisol, you are feeling less reward from those efforts.
The effort feels maximally expensive, but the reward feels minimally cheap.
Which just makes that RPE calculation perpetually negative.
Perpetually. The brain is calculating, I am spending catastrophic resources, and my reward system tells me I'm getting nothing back. And the rational economist in your brain makes the only logical choice.
It cuts the funding, the resolution dies.
Not because you're weak, but because your body has chemically convinced your brain the whole project is a financial disaster.
So if we know the slip is basically inevitable, then the psychological response to it becomes the single most critical factor for long-term success.
This is the fork in the road. This is where we have to choose between the destructive loop of self-criticism and the constructive resilience of self-compassion. And for this, we really need to bring in the research of Dr. Kristen Neff, who so carefully differentiates self-esteem from self-compassion.
We were all raised on the religion of self-esteem, right? Feel good about yourself, focus on your strengths.
Self-esteem is a really fragile and conditional thing. It's based on external evaluation. You're good only if you succeed or if you outperform someone else. So when the resolution fails in week 3, when the scale stalls, the external evidence you need to feel good about yourself vanishes.
Which just pours fuel on the fire of the abstinence violation effect.
It's a perfect match. You get defensive, you deny the mistake, you blame something else, you abandon the goal entirely just to protect your ego. Self-esteem requires flawless success, which makes it the enemy of learning.
But wait a second. If self-compassion just means being nice to yourself, aren't we just letting ourselves off the hook? Don't you need some of that internal critique to force yourself back on track?
That's such a common misconception. But the research shows the complete opposite is true. Self-compassion is unconditional, but is highly motivational. It just operates through a different chemical system. It has three components: self-kindness, which is treating yourself the way you'd treat a good friend who failed;
Okay.
common humanity, which is recognizing that failure and frustration are universal human experiences, not some isolated personal defect you have.
Right, everyone struggles with this.
And finally, mindfulness, which is just observing your pain and frustration without either wallowing in it or trying to repress it.
And this has real physiological benefits that directly fight back against that cortisol loop.
The primary benefit is it deactivates the threat system. Self-criticism activates that amygdala cortisol axis. It treats yourself as an enemy. Self-compassion immediately lowers your heart rate, reduces cortisol, and keeps you out of that exhaustion phase.
And by calming the system down, it lets the PFC, the brakes, come back online.
Precisely. And it does that by activating the mammalian care system. Self-compassion triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding and safety hormone. When you apply that feeling of safety internally, you create the emotional buffer you need to look at a failure objectively, without fear.
So the prefrontal cortex can get back to its job.
Yes, the PFC stays online because all that cortisol and amygdala noise has been quieted down, and this allows for cognitive restructuring. So instead of the emotional attribution, I am weak, you can switch to the logical analysis. I failed because I forgot to set my clothes out the night before.
It turns the failure from a catastrophe into actionable data.
Exactly, and the research is clear. It actively increases long-term motivation. People who practice self-compassion are more likely to acknowledge their role in a failure and try again, driven by an intrinsic desire to be healthy, not an extrinsic need to be perfect. It is the true resilient switch.
Okay, we've diagnosed the collapse, the 66-day mismatch, the negative RPE, the AVE, the metabolic drain. So now we have to switch from relying on willpower, which we've shown is totally unreliable, to neural engineering.
Yes, specific evidence-based tools that are designed to counteract those biological failures and build a bridge to automaticity.
We're replacing motivation, which is a feeling that comes and goes,
With structure, which is robust and external to how you feel in the moment, we are essentially automating the maintenance of the habit until the real autopilot system is ready to take over.
Okay, let's start with a foundational rule for continuity designed to stop the neurological solidification of failure, the never miss twice principle.
It's a simple rule popularized by James Clear, and it states, missing once is an accident, missing twice is the start of a new habit. And that's not just a cute saying, it's a powerful behavioral arrest mechanism.
Why is missing twice so dangerous neurologically?
It comes down to a process called long-term potentiation, or LTP. It's how neural pathways get stronger. Neurons that fire together wire together.
Yeah.
But what people forget is that non-action also strengthens a pathway. If you miss the gym on Monday, that's one instance. If you miss again on Tuesday, your brain actually starts to strengthen the pathway for not going to the gym.
So the non-habit starts to get its own structural integrity.
It does. So this principle forces you to intervene before that negative pathway can gain any real neural mass.
It also protects your identity.
Yes, exactly. A single miss can be dismissed. I am a runner who missed one day. But two misses in a row, that challenges the identity. Am I really a runner anymore?
So to guarantee that second miss doesn't happen, we have to use the reduced scope strategy. This is the practical antidote to that RPE crash when your brain is screaming, the cost is too high.
This is often called the 2-minute rule. If your goal was a 45-minute workout and you skipped yesterday, your goal for today must be radically reduced to something with zero resistance. Not a 20-minute workout, something simpler. I will put on my running shoes and walk around the block. Or I will drive to the gym, walk in, and stretch for 2 minutes.
So the focus shifts entirely from optimization, getting fit, to just existence, just reinforcing the habit loop itself.
You're overriding the negative RPE by reducing the required effort to below your brain's rejection threshold. The goal in the valley of death is not efficiency. It's ensuring the neural trace just stays active.
You can't optimize a habit that no longer exists.
You can't.
Okay, next. To actively fight the emotional fallout from the AVE and that cortisol spike, we need a formal repair process, the reset ritual.
Yes. This is a 5-minute cognitive protocol designed to manually reboot your PFC after a flip before the what the hell effect can take hold.
Let's walk through an example. Someone missed their morning yoga and scrolled social media instead, and now they feel that deep shame. How do they use the ritual?
Okay, they immediately stop and start step 1. Physiological reset. 1 minute. They do box breathing, inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4, or just drink a big glass of cold water. The mechanism here is to dampen that acute fight or flight response. You have to calm the body before you can reason with the brain.
Okay, step 2.
Step 2, the failure audit. 2 minutes. The prompt is objective. What specifically triggered the slip? So they write, I slipped because I left my phone by my bed, the alarm went off, I saw a notification, and the momentum for yoga was gone. The mechanism here is affect labeling. By putting it into specific language, you shift processing from your emotional limbic system to your logical PFC. It changes the story from I am weak to I made a planning error.
It reframes the whole thing as just a technical problem.
Exactly. Then step 3, the compassion reframe. 1 minute, prompt. What would I say to a friend in this exact situation? You'd probably say, hey, that was a tough start. It happens. Social media is designed to be addictive. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Let's just focus on the next right thing. This activates that oxytocin cure system and neutralizes the ADE-induced shame.
And finally, step 4.
The micro-action commitment. 1 minute, prompt. What is the single smallest action I can take right now to get back on the path? The commitment might be, I will take my phone and plug it into the kitchen for the rest of the night. This creates an immediate, trivial implementation intention. It signals to your brain that the project is still active.
Which leads us perfectly to our final strategy, implementation intentions. Preloading that fatigued PFC to handle future decisions automatically.
This is arguably the most powerful tool for engineering your way through week 3. The formula is simple. If situation X arises, the cue, then I will perform response Y, the action. The power comes from removing the need for in-the-moment decision-making, which is so taxing for a tired brain.
Give us an example.
If your failure point is coming home tired, you'd set this up. If I open the front door and feel too tired to go to the gym, then I will immediately put on my running shoes. Or if the clock hits 3 p.m. at work, then I will stand up and walk to the kitchen to eat my pre-cut vegetables.
And the research shows this works, just deciding ahead of time. Why is it so much more robust than just saying, I'll try to resist?
Because in week 3, your motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. But a plan is robust. When that negative RPE hits, you don't have the mental resources to weigh the pros and cons. The decision has to be instant. Implementation intentions automate the initiation of the habit long before the habit itself is fully automated. You are designing a precise, automated circuit breaker for your own inevitable points of failure.
So this deep dive really shows us that the New Year's hangover isn't a mystery. And it's definitely not a judgment on your character. It's a precise biological convergence of all these predictable factors.
It's that exact moment where the 66-day myth sets up the expectation mismatch, where the dopamine prediction error turns aggressively negative, where the extinction burst triggers those intense cravings, and where the general adaptation syndrome shifts your body into that high-cost resistance phase, just exhausting the resources you need for self-control.
And maybe most toxically, it's the moment where the abstinence violation effect transforms a small slip into a permanent collapse through that corrosive cycle of shame.
And by mapping all these mechanisms, we can see the solution isn't trying harder. Brute force just makes the metabolic drain worse. The solution is trying smarter through this kind of neural engineering.
Which means adjusting your expectations. It's 66 days, not 21. It means replacing shame with self-compassion to keep your PFC online. And prioritizing continuity over intensity with tools like the reduced scope strategy and that reset ritual.
You now understand the playbook for failure. You can see the wall coming. And that knowledge is the power that lets you engineer the bridge to get across that valley of death.
The week 3 wall isn't the end of the road.
Not at all. It's merely the toll booth. It's the price of admission for making real, lasting neuroplastic change. So now that you understand the biology of failure, here's the final thought. What is one if-then implementation intention you can set right now to protect yourself from the negative RPE of next week? Think about your most common failure point and create a guaranteed, immediate, trivial response. That is the real challenge of lasting change.
Your tools. It's the strength to build anew. It's the light to guide you through. It's the choice to find your way. Starting here, starting today.
If you're sitting there feeling guilty because you've already slipped up on your goals, let it go. The new year hype is over, and now the real work begins. Remember the rule. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. So don't wait for Monday to restart. Just get back to it right now. Next week, we are shifting gears. If you often feel like your brain is spinning out of control, you need to tune in next Saturday. I'm dropping the trailer for Season 4, The Anxiety Anchor. It is going to be our most important season yet. Until then, be kind to yourself. I'll catch you on your journey.